Hi everybody, my name is Justin Stoney and I'm the founder of New York Vocal Coaching here in New York City. Welcome to episode 16 of Voice Lessons to the World, the show where we want to answer your questions about singing from all over the world. And I'll give you a chance to ask questions later, but our question for this week comes from Charles B. in Ontario, Canada. And Charles writes, "Dear Justin, everybody says my voice is great. My voice teachers, my friends, my family, they all love my voice. However, I think I sound bad. I can't stop judging my voice. Do you have any tips?" Now, Charles, that's an awesome thing to bring up, and I think that so many of us judge our voices, and this judgment can cause a limitation for us. We know it causes frustration and lack of growth, but a lot of us still, we always want to make good sounds. We're afraid to make bad sounds, and we judge our voices all the time. We think we sound bad. So I hope I can help you sift through some of this today. The first thing I want to bring up is that you can't hear yourself properly. That's right. You can't hear yourself right. Now, part of the reason that I'm employed is because that's true. If that was not true, I would be out on the street. Because if you could just sit at home and sing and say, "Oh, well, that sounded good, I'm going to do more of that," and, "Oh, well, that didn't sound so good, I'm never going to do that again," then everybody would be able to just sit at home and get good at singing. But part of the reason why you can't, and usually why you need instruction, is because you can't hear yourself accurately. So why we know this is if you hear yourself on an answering machine or something and you hear it played back, you say, "Oh my God, I sound like that?" You expect this deep, rich voice, but what you hear back is some tinny, whiny sound. Now, why is that true? We have resonators when we speak and when we sing, and some of those primary resonators are the nasopharynx and the nasal cavity. These are two areas that are actually behind the ears. And so you can't hear those resonators very well, but those are some of the best resonators that we use for our sound making. So the sound that comes out to all of us is different than what we hear in our heads. So Charles, I hope that that alone is helpful for you, that what you're hearing is not actually what we're hearing. So if you're judging that, you're actually not able to judge it with 100% accuracy. The second thing I want to talk about is what this judgment that we all do causes. We live in a culture with reality TV shows that have people going in front of millions and having their voices judged. And if you do well, you move on to the next round and maybe you become, the greatest of stars. And if you don't do so well, you might become a laughingstock. And so we have this environment and a culture of judging singing. And that's not actually necessarily so healthy, because you don't want to go on stage, you don't even want to be in the voice studio or in your practice room with a judgmental mindset. Judging the voice too much causes physical tension and a hold of the breath. Just think about it. If you were going to listen and really scrutinize something, think about the tension that just listening causes. Actually, let's go ahead and try it. Just take a listen to the sounds in your own room. Just take a pause and just really listen hard for a second. And you notice when you go and just listen, typically the body freezes and the breath freezes. So just the act of listening and scrutinizing causes us to hold on in a way that we don't want. We know that the best performers go out there judgment-free. They've got an ease about them. They're not trying to make it right. They're just letting it go. That's one thing. Another thing is that if you aren't trusting your sound, if you're constantly judging it all the time, you're going to want to hear it better so that you can judge it. So you may just push it out into the room for that to happen so that you can hear it better. You'll take it out of our friendly resonators and you'll push it out here. Now, the problem with that is that you're going to hear it better, but we're not going to hear it as well. And it's going to sound better to you, but not as good to us. Interestingly, when you rely on the resonators that we want, mostly for singing, you won't hear it as well, and it won't sound as good to you, but to us, we'll hear it better, and it will sound better. So there's a little bit of trust and like a leap of faith that goes on when you make sound, to not push it out there where you can hear it, but to rely on the mechanics that you know are going to make you sound good. Then the next thing, and I've talked a little bit about this before, is that we need the bad sounds. We absolutely have to have the bad sounds. If you want to make the good sounds, you have to have the bad sounds. In technique, you have to have the bad sounds. One thing that we've mentioned before is cracking. If I want to have a great sound, I've got to be okay with cracking. If I have somewhere over the rainbow, and I go too far, somewhere over the rainbow, or I don't go far enough, somewhere over the rainbow, or I go both and I crack, somewhere. I'm back and forth between too much and too little, too much and too little. But being able to go back and forth, being able to find something in between there, being okay with cracking. Somewhere I find that middle, too little, too much, where, right in between. I have to be okay with cracking if I'm going to find that in between. That's on a technical level. A bad sound, cracking, which leads to good sound, mix. But on a stylistic level, I just want to mention to you, Charles, and everybody, let's just think about some of your favorite singers. I know that they've got great voices, but can you think of some nuances to your favorite singers that are actually not the prettiest sounds? Some of them might have a little gravel, might have a little breathiness, might have a little vocal fry. They might have a vibrato that's unique or uneven. They might push their voice a little too hard sometimes. They might not have some strength in some areas. But those uniquenesses are actually what is making that singer remarkable and special. Interestingly, the bad sounds, quote unquote, are the things that are making that singer stand out. So I'm not saying don't work on your voice. I'm not saying don't aim for perfection. But just know that a lot of times the sounds that are not necessarily the best are a part of the singer's whole package that makes them unique. So if we sit and say, well, I'm not going to go out there if I make bad sounds. I'm not going to go out there until it's perfect. Then truly we're missing out on a special singer, because there's nobody that's going to go out there and make perfect, pristine sounds all the time. It's just not realistic. So we want to allow less than perfect sounds to be a part of our style, actually, as we're growing, and maybe just because it sounds great to leave it alone. So then what do we do with judgment? How do we get through this? One thing is have people that you trust. You said that you have a voice teacher, family and friends that support you. That's great. I'd encourage you, Charles, and anybody with a great situation like that, to listen to them. If you're the only person that listens to your voice and says, well, this is terrible, then probably you're wrong, because everybody else loves it. So you need to find a way to love it too. And that's the second thing. You need to be in a positive environment. Whether that's in your vocal studio or in your practice room, the environment that you make for yourself needs to be a positive one. If you're constantly giving yourself negative messages all the time when you sing and saying, well, this sounds bad, with voice and singing, that's something that's really going to stand in your way. You need to fake it till you make it. You need to tell yourself that it sounds pretty good even before it does, or maybe it already does. You still need to constantly reinforce a good message to your singing. It's going to pay off big time so that you don't have those holds and those limitations that the negative thoughts cause. Then finally, I just want you to experiment. Go ahead and be okay with the cracking, be okay with the experimentation and the making of bad sounds when you're in the voice studio, when you're practicing, because it's the only way that you're going to have a good, solid technique and a wide spectrum, a variety of sounds that you can make in your performances. So, Charles and all, I hope that you can work through that judgment and get to a better place so that your singing can be even freer. And I hope that's been helpful for you guys today. If you have questions that you'd like us to answer on the show, you can send an email to questions@voicelessonstotheworld.com. So we just encourage you guys not to lose the joy, don't lose the passion. Don't let anybody tell you you can't sing, especially if that's yourself, because deep down you know it's not true. Get with a great voice teacher in your area. If you guys are in New York City, you can check us out at www.newyorkvocalcoaching.com. And if you like these videos, you can visit www.voicelessonstotheworld.com. I'm Justin Stoney. We'll see you next time.